Hi everyone, here we go with our PowerPoint on media. Our notes start out with a reference to the fireside chats and press conferences that FDR gave to comfort people during World War II and to just give them a report and an update every evening. The famous soundbite on here is the one where he addresses Congress and the nation after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. A soundbite is something that is very short and that was significant enough that the media picked it up and they play it over and over again. All right, jumping to the 60s and 70s, Vietnam and Watergate. This launched investigative journalism because the media and the people lost confidence and faith in our government, believing that they might not be telling us the truth about certain things, such as Richard Nixon lying about Watergate and his involvement, and about our effectiveness in the Vietnam War. Especially Watergate began the era of investigative journalism due to what it says here, an attitude of cynicism toward government, not really trusting the government. So investigative journalists would dig deeper for information and details about scandals such as Watergate. The media became like a watchdog, keeping an eye on politicians and on government and asking many questions as new things came along. They became seen, the reporters, as truth seekers. Journalists were assuming that politicians had something to hide, and politicians were concerned that journalists were out to embarrass them or find flaws in their character. As far as the relationship between journalists or reporters and their sources, the most famous one back in the day was the relationship between Woodward and Bernstein, who were the reporters for the Washington Post. And this guy, Mark Felt, who was working for the FBI and leaking information to Woodward and Bernstein about the Watergate details. They would meet secretly. They never revealed his identity, and he himself stepped forward and revealed his identity when he was in his 80s. So symbiotic or mutualistic relationship means that they need each other. Biology students can say, I guess, symbiotic relationship is the overarching concept, and mutualistic meaning they help each other. Political functions of the media. What does the media do in regards to politics? The media frames important problems. Remember, we call them the gatekeeper. They sift through all the news and then present to us what is news, and sometimes with their own bias. They help us think about events, provide a forum for discussion, conversation about political events, and socialize our children to our political culture. Think back to Sesame Street, where there are messages in that program that were sent to our children or to you all about caring for one another, grumpy people like Oscar. Anyway, think about what you learned from Sesame Street, and that's a socialization process. All right, political coverage by the media during presidential campaigns. They deal with the game. The people that read the news, see the news, are looking for high interest, and often that's not in how they stand on the issues, but rather who's ahead in the polls in the election race, strategies that candidates are using, speculation on who might win, who's looking good, what might happen. So that coverage tends to emphasize details and poll results, which tend to entice readers. Media events. Guess where I am? What is a media event? It's a staged event. It doesn't just accidentally happen. And the purpose is to get free coverage. The media will come out and cover it. So if your congressman is going to come to the high school, the Sachse Media might come out, newspaper might come out and cover that because that's interesting to the community, and might interview him. So that could be a media event if his people notified the paper that he was going to do this. Reporting the news. What is political neutrality? Well, it's objective journalism, and it's the opposite of false news or fake news. It would be news that is also not biased, ideally. Reporters, in their heart of hearts, should believe in journalistic objectivity and not lose readership because they are viewed as biased, although the opposite could be true too. If they're a conservative publication, people who are conservatives will want to read that publication. It's good when stories offer two opposing views. But because the news is driven by the profit motive, journalists are going to seek out stories that will draw large audiences, that draw attention. Mass media, we know that's television, radio, newspapers, but the principal source nowadays is broadcast media. Remember this trivia fact, media seems to have the least effect in terms of direct impact on how people vote. What has the most impact on how people vote is their ideology. Are they conservative? Are they liberal? If they're conservative, probably they'll vote Republican. Liberal, probably they'll vote Democratic. Not so much what they saw on the news, more so how they feel with their own personal ideology. Media impacts. It impacts the importance people attach to problems. If it's in the news a lot, blasted all over the television, they're going to think it's an important problem, and we will be talking about it. Also, media impacts how we evaluate political leaders, what their behavior is, and what's reported. Think about it right now. We've got the guy that shot the poor man on Facebook. I just got a news clip on my phone that says that he's dead. The shooter is dead. Let's see. Okay. Facebook murderer suspect kills himself after pursuit. So that's what's leading the news. And let's see what else is in the news. Nothing that is that earth-shaking. Okay. Selective perception. We tend to hear what we want to hear, and we tend to block out and not listen to what we don't want to hear. So selective choosing perception, what we hear or listen to. It's common with political advertising, campaign advertising. We don't really hear what the opponent of our candidate is saying. We don't pay attention to it because we don't believe it or don't agree with it, so we're not going to listen to it. We'll probably think that it's all a bunch of phooey and not true. So we listen to what we want to hear, which isn't good. We need to listen openly to all sorts of positions on the issues, but we don't usually do that. But in the voting booth, party identification and ideology are still number one. So, and they kind of go hand in hand. Not that you have to be a Democrat if you're liberal, you have to be a Republican if you're conservative, but it tends to go hand in hand, especially when you're voting. Reporting the news may not reflect reality because news is driven by the profit motive. A spin doctor. What is a spin doctor? Well, I had a video from The Simpsons to show you, but it's stopped by our filter, internet filter. Anyway, a spin doctor takes something bad that happens and puts a spin on it so it sounds good or acceptable. Damage control. This guy says, okay, run for your lives. And due to the swine flu. And that's Joe Biden speaking. And the White House spokesman spins that and says he means jogging's good for you. Get it? Negative advertising, mudslinging, down in the gutter. Always happens. Recent years, many more negative commercials have been showing up, but they've been around since the very beginning of our government. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had their own mudslinging that they did. So negative advertising, good or bad? We think it turns people away from voting, but I'd like to see numbers on that nowadays. Political cartoon about negative commercials. He misses the negative political ads. Long-term impact, we are taught, of negative advertising is that it decreases voter turnout and creates cynicism about candidates, politicians in the process. Like, yeah, they're a bunch of bums. See, you can see it in the commercials. Media strives to be objective, meaning not biased. Why? Because if it's too biased, you might lose readers. I'm not reading that. I'm not buying that. It's just a bunch of ultra-conservative or ultra-left-wing people writing this in articles that don't support anything I believe in. But good journalism tries to give both sides of an issue, and editors and reporters aim for neutrality and objectivity. I feel the Wall Street Journal gives a pretty objective view in reporting. The New York Times is known as liberal, left-wing. I don't know. I don't read the New York Times every day, but I do like a lot of things that I can get from the New York Times for teaching purposes. So you just have to read carefully. Parties are less important because of the media. Voters go to Google if they want to know about a candidate. They don't pick up the phone and call the Republican Party in their county and ask about a candidate. High-tech politics delivers news faster, but it's not as complete. So when we get information in the news, we tend to often look at the headlines, read the push information that comes across our phones, and not go really deep into the issues. That takes time and energy. Because primaries have the really ultra committed party members, a candidate has to be very clear in where he or she stands on the issues. So that's something that forces them to take a clear stand on policy. Print media, we know what that is. Interesting. People are more skeptical about what they read in the newspapers than what I think it's because in broadcast news, they see the person actually saying that, and they can see video of the event, and that's all I can figure. Narrowcasting, cable TV, internet, focused on one topic, like ESPN. Mega media, big corporations that own multiple sources of media, print media, broadcast media, radio, even film. Leaks are, well, that's what Mark Felt gave to the Watergate reporters. He leaked information about what was going on in the White House. So the media then protects him as their source. They don't want to reveal who he is, because if they do, then they lose the source, and they also come across as being untrustworthy. So some states have what are called shield laws that protect sources. They are not forced. Reporters are protected against having to reveal their sources. Other bits of information about the media, you have a beat. If your beat's the White House, you report only on events in the White House. If your beat is Congress, then you're going to report from the Capitol building. If your beat is Syria, then you're going to report from Syria. Trial balloons, intentional news leak to see the response to that. And we talked about that symbiotic relationship. And we talked about sound bites, short video or audio clips. News, we've talked about that. Policy agenda is what you want to get on. That's what Congress looks at and public officials look at when passing policy. Policy entrepreneurs, people who invest their political capital in an issue like Bono and human rights issues. And you can think of a lot more, probably much more than I know of, who would be considered policy entrepreneurs. George Clooney gets involved in a lot of that. Brad Pitt gets involved with a lot of Habitat for Humanity things. People who are well known and then can speak out or